all right. Good morning, everybody. Yeah.
Top of the morning. Top of the morning.
What's happening, man?
I'm good, big guy. How are you?
Yeah, I can't complain. I listen, feeling good. I was a little bit tired yesterday because I had a pretty hectic weekend. But I
Yeah.
believe you didn't sleep so well, so you're the one.
Oh
who's,
my goodness.
You
Yeah, it
had
was
the
horrible.
insomnia.
Yeah. And I've got no idea
Oh.
why. Like there wasn't anything of particular importance that was on my mind. I just couldn't fall asleep for whatever reason. And the later it got, the more frustrated I got, which made me stay up even later. It was just
Oh,
it was horrible.
oh no!
But I'm
Listen to
alive.
this.
I'm alive.
Leanne says she is, this is Leanne Winnin. She says she's so chuffed to be catching the show live today while you're painting a vase. Very good.
Oh,
Bit of
good morning.
creativity first thing in the morning. Yeah, I like
Yeah, that
this.
sounds like fun.
Right? Oh, it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So, what can we start with this morning? There's so much on the menu. We've got, of course, Democracy 101 a little bit later on. So get your questions ready. And I mean this because so many people are they're still not sure about the elections, what's happening now that registrations are done. How does it all work? Where do you vote? Where do you not vote? What are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? What if you're overseas? Anything like that that you need to know. So today is it's almost like a public service call to action for anybody who is still sitting around waiting to figure out what they're going to do, whether you're going to go and vote here or there or anywhere else on election day. This is your chance to find out all the information that you need to know. And you can do that because after 7 o'clock, we will be joined by the general manager for Electoral Operations. So this is the guy who he manages the whole thing across the whole country. He's a really important dude. And I think it'll be useful for you to talk to him.
I think so too.
Come on down, join us. We're keen to hear from you. Okay, so a couple of things. First up, producer James, who's even got a spanner in his bio there, says we made it live and on time with working audio. It's already a good day. Yes, it is, James. Yes, it is.
Sir.
And
Yes, sir.
ex-producer Ryan, who's about to leave for Ireland, says morning all. So I see lots and lots of people busy here. Even Angelo Agrizzi is joining us this morning. That's always good to know. You know, we've got some whistleblowers, guys who used to be involved in corruption.
Yeah, once upon a time.
Yeah.
You know, his time on the stand at the commission was one of them. It was hilariously tragic, if I can put it that way.
Why? Because you suddenly found out how screwed the whole system is, how rotten everything is.
Just how cheap some people are. Like he pointed out that he sent groceries to someone's house.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
In fact, I interviewed Angelo shortly after, so I'm glad he's still listening to us. You see, once you get the bug for this show, you can't really leave. I interviewed him a while ago, and he was fascinating because I remember the person in question that you're talking about, I think is Nomvula Mokonyane. She was prepared to like change tenders and award things for a box of meat, I think it was.
Like, my God.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? So you never know who's going to be listening when you join us in the morning. Sibusiso says, good morning, all. And Slippery Pickle says, I'll be at the polls at the table. It says, if voting changed governments, they wouldn't let you do it in the first place. Change my mind. It's very Stephen Crowder of you, Slippery Pickle, but I like it. Angelo says, should I have kept quiet? No siviwe. Well, no siviwe is in the news because she apparently took a little bribe.
Yep.
But you know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, I tweeted about it yesterday. She's going to prolong the legal process. Ultimately, what's going to happen is that she's just going to get a slap on the wrist, and life continues as usual.
Correct. And I think you're exactly right. Sadly, that's precisely what's going to happen.
Yep.
All right. Well, I don't want to start the day talking about politicians, even though we already have. I think we must start with something to make you laugh. So I follow so many stupid channels. If you saw some of the stupid things that I follow that I'm really into on social media, this one channel is like they take this red hot iron ball, like a marble,
Mm-hmm.
but a big one. They heat it up until it's red hot,
Yep.
and they drop it in things.
Mm.
Like they'll drop it in, they'll drop it in on a coconut, or they'll put it in a barrel of Vaseline or whatever. So look at this. Yeah.
The video I saw of them doing that, I think it was like a barrel just filled with ice, and they let that
Yes.
ball sink in there, and they made ramen noodles on top of it or something like that. Yeah, it's madness.
So, I mean, it's such a
Absolute
stupid
madness.
thing because they really aren't doing anything revolutionary or clever here. They're just the same thing every time. You just find something new,
Mm.
and they try to melt or boil or burn through whatever they can put it on. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's really, I find this kind of thing fascinating. I'd rather watch that than politics some days, So the thing that got my attention yesterday is this is pretty gross. So they put it in aloe vera gel,
Ugh.
you know, stuff that people will use on their skin or whatever. But
Mm.
listen to the sound. Just listen to the sound it makes when you drop this thing into aloe vera gel. Are you ready?
Yeah, I was ready as hell. It's
All
like
right,
it's
very
got gears.
so, I mean, if you just listen to the sound, if you're not watching this, and you don't need to be watching it because it just looks
Yeah,
like someone dropping a red hot ball of iron into a beaker filled with Vaseline or whatever. But it sounds so goddamn funny.
yeah, it's hilarious.
It's a new
Like
kind of fart machine.
seriously, if you were walking past and you heard that, you'd swear someone in some way needs help. Like that person needs help immediately. That person's in distress. Oh my word, that was hilarious.
No. So I sent it to Leanne Mole, who was on the show with us yesterday, and she replied immediately and said she was once at a Chinese restaurant and she heard in the next stall in the bathroom someone made exactly that sound,
Oh
and she
my
was tapping her feet, both her feet on the floor at the same time. That's all she could see, obviously, but this was the sound coming from the cubicle next to her. So I thought that was pretty hilarious.
oh man.
I can't be serious all the time. I'm sorry. I know there are people who
Yeah,
come here for that, but
seriously, it
I
just
really
makes you
can't.
dull, honestly.
Oh,
You need to have a
man.
chuckle every now and again. And I was pointing this out to uh, I forgot who I was talking about, but anyway, they were asking me like, why do you keep the friends that you do? I'm like, they're genuinely the few people that I can have a belly laugh with. You know, when you end up having to
Yeah,
crawl
exactly.
into the fetal position because you just can't stand it. That's one of the main reason my friends are my friends.
Exactly.
Like you have to
100%
let it out.
right. So, this is funny too. I found there's this channel that all they do is they find like people who speak bizarre and different and weird languages, that some of these languages are very, very threatened. They might not last another generation. For example,
Mm,
this tribe, I found out from somebody I know who's actually an expert in these things. He's going around and he's helping the Nama and the Khoi and the San and all the various sub tribes to look after their languages and to document the languages, because otherwise they'll go out of circulation and people will forget how to speak them. So there are a couple
mm,
of old people in like remote villages who still speak some of these languages, and these are people from Tanzania, he tells me, who are called the Hadzabe tribe, and they are remnants of the San people in Tanzania. So what happened
mm,
is these guys either were there, like more than 900 or 1,000 years ago, but it's even more likely that they were pushed out all the way south, all the way north, and then fled east again. So I mean, I find this fascinating, but listen to this. I mean, I know a lot of South Africans pride themselves on being able to get the clicks right, but listen to these ones. This is quite
What's your
something.
name? What's your own name?
Shakuku.
What?
Shakuku.
What's your name? Ndonya. What's your name?
Ella.
Eh?
Ella.
Hmm. All I can say is that woman is like, she could see she's in charge of the whole fucking tribe. She's keeping them all in line.
She's like, Donya. What?
Donya. No, she's like, I don't take this shit.
She looked like she was about to start a rap verse. It was serious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, she's made of something tough. So, all right. You want to talk about something that is quite serious this morning. Oh, by the way, coming up tomorrow, I've got to throw forward to this. So I spoke to a guy because, there's this it's just a never ending dialogue around what's happening in Gaza and what's happening in Israel. And a lot of people in South Africa are very interested in this. I've got to say, not just Jewish people and pro-Palestinian people. A lot of South Africans are very interested because they see, and I think you can't be stupid and ignore the fact that this has an international relations element, which is about the globe. It's about a conflict that will ultimately go further than those countries. And that's why we have to pay attention to it. But I met with, it's about a week now since I met him, but Daniel Taub, who is an expert in international law. He specializes in counterterrorism and the laws of war. He was an Israeli diplomat. He actually did the negotiations in the 90s between Arafat and the Israelis, which is really interesting. So I think you might find that conversation fairly fascinating. I certainly loved it. Hugely intelligent man, very, very smart and perceptive takes on what's going on there. And it may be worth a look. But you wanted to talk about how political correctness is actually shaping language.
Yeah, and we were having a chat about it during when we were doing Ryan's farewell, when we were sitting around at the table, and I was pointing out the fact that it's amazing how nowadays, like, you can't just make a statement for something. You have to first point out that you're not speaking about the entirety of whatever that subject may be. Like, for argument's sake, if you were to point out bad behavior on the part of men, you'd have to first off say, like, add the caveat of saying, mind you, I'm not saying that all men are this, but there are men who do 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, to intelligent people, I would assume pointing out a fact does not make, is not a holistic thing. Like,
in other words,
we can easily point to one thing and come to an understanding about it without having to shame the rest of the things that go along with it.
Yeah, I mentioned this yesterday on the show. I heard someone explaining how Jon Stewart used to say that when you asked Hillary Clinton a question, she would start buffering. You could see her already lining up the most politically correct answer she could come up with to offend the least number of people. But I saw another clip yesterday of Dr. Phil on Bill Maher's show, and he was talking about how political correctness and wokeism has really shaped language. And he said, I'm not just talking about pronouns, because there's some words that you're not allowed to use and there's some words that you are forced to use.
Right.
But what he was saying is that the Department of Justice in the US has come up with some kind of euphemism for a felon. So instead of calling someone a felon, a prisoner, a lawbreaker, a criminal, in America, there's this whole movement now by people who want to have these people called justice interacting persons.
What
persons
the hell
who are
does that even mean?
yeah. People who are interacting with justice. I mean, can you imagine a more ridiculous euphemism for someone who's stealing cars or raping women or, well, I mean, it's ridiculous. And this
What's
comes
wrong with the
from,
word criminal?
well, you see, these people, their weapon is language. And this is what the rest of us have to realize. It's taken me a long time to get this into my head. The people who do this with language, they do it maliciously. They are not trying to use language to communicate. They are trying to use language to manipulate. So they will use a term like justice compromised people or justice interacting people or whatever, because They want the rest of us to be brainwashed into thinking that these people are socially acceptable. They want us to use the language they choose for us to use and get us so busy thinking, like you said, every time you have a conversation now, you have to consider all the exceptions. You have to be like a lawyer
Mm.
before you make a statement about anything. You first have to look at the exclusions to that statement. You have to say, well, as a straight white man, and which is
Oh
such a
God.
stupid thing to say because
Oh my God.
who came for that? No one, right? So you first have to say these things, and then you have to make sure that everyone around the table isn't going to get upset. So you then have to say, no offense to anybody here at this table, or I'm going to say this, but I want to be clear that I don't necessarily support this and that, and all this kind of crap. Instead of just saying it.
And it's going to kill our day-to-day interactions, because if I'm too busy tiptoeing around your feelings of
Yeah.
instead of just speaking the truth,
Yeah.
we're both going to get into this tangle that just doesn't end. It'll be excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, because we'll both be too terrified to say anything because we're too terrified to offend one another. And on top of that, who said people's feelings were premium all of a sudden? Like, why are those being treated as the paramount thing that we should all care about? Like, genuinely, now I have to care about how you feel about something. When did the world ever
Um,
care how we felt? How we felt?
well,
Like,
I
seriously?
know, but this is, of course, again, you can say that, Jack, but you are going to run up against people who think that the only thing that matters is how they feel on a day-to-day basis. And
Mm,
they are genuinely preoccupied with that to a degree that would frighten you. Like that's all they've got. That's their
it's such-
whole thing, right? So let's just take, for example, let's take a comedian. Like I watched Jimmy Carr over the weekend, and he made a couple of jokes about. Well, he went in all the directions. He made rape jokes, child abuse jokes. I mean, he just didn't hold back on anything. But
yeah.
when you're going to a show, this is kind of what this is what you're buying in for. And I mentioned to Leanne yesterday, there were a couple of moments in the show, especially when it came to like religion, that a bunch of people, I mean, this is in Pretoria. So you would think that if you bought a ticket to see Jimmy Carr instead of going to Loftus, you would expect him to make some jokes that won't resonate with you 100% of the
Hmm.
time. Right, there were a couple of
Hmm.
jokes that I thought, whoo, he's going to get into trouble for this. But not for a minute did I go, I'm offended. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So what happens is that, again, these guys on the other side, it's not because they actually genuinely are hurt by something. The guys who make these rules up, the people who want you to be PC all the time, they're not actually that interested in even their own feelings. What that's a ruse. What they're trying to
Yeah.
do is manipulate you with language. They want you to be so busy thinking about how you've got to follow all these different rules and jump through these different hoops that you don't make a point that will fight their point. That's what it is. It's clever. I mean, it's so Machiavellian. It's so just unbelievably sly and cunning. This is what
Yeah.
they do.
It's pretty
This is what
low.
these people, they live for this stuff. That's all they do, and you could see it. It happens in universities in the humanities departments. It happens with there's some people who've made a life of this. There's a woman in America. Her name is Robin DiAngelo. She's a white woman who's written all these books about like white fragility and how, white people are just the most evil thing ever. And she makes a ton of money off of stupid white people who
Yeah.
want to be made to feel bad because they need a purpose. They need to feel something. They're just so numb. And the only way they can feel better about themselves is if they somehow, like those people in the Middle Ages that used to whip themselves at the cat o' nine tails to
Mm,
feel the pain of Jesus on the cross. That was the whole idea. These guys are like, they're addicted to feeling guilty about themselves and feeling guilty about being
why
white.
why
And
would
she tells
anyone want to live that way? It
Jackie,
it boggles the mind, because
Jack,
ultimately you're fighting against your own self-interest at the end of the day because you won't be able to express yourself. It's madness.
This woman sells, I kid you not, thousands of books. I wouldn't say millions, but thousands of books every week. She lectures around the world. She's been in South Africa, dude. She's been invited by universities and high schools in South Africa to lecture these self-absorbed white people about how evil they are. And they sit there and take it like it's like masochism. It's the weirdest thing. And
it's the highest form of masochism.
I just don't understand it, but people are into it. This is what they do.
Ultimately, though, there's a video I want you to check out. Like, what's going to end up happening is we're not going to be able to interact with one another in a normal way. Because if you were to come across a group of 5 people, all of them are going to have different opinions about things. And there's a high chance that one of them might be offended by one of the things that you say. And it's just, it's a dead end. I don't see where they could possibly, what the good could be for these people that are trying to control our language. It's madness. But James got me the video. Could you please play it?
Sure. Let me put it on for you.
Check this out. It's madness.
All right.
Guy,
This is
excuse
how we're
me.
gonna live
Would you mind
in a
taking a
couple.
photo of us?
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody say cheese.
Oh, actually, I'm a vegan. Could you please have us say something else?
Okay, everybody say tofu.
Tofu is actually not as good for you as vegans think. Any CrossFitter will tell you that. It's bad for your testosterone levels.
Okay, I'm sorry. How about we all just smile?
Oh, if one more asshole asks me to smile.
Not really an arsehole. Taking a photo for you, so...
What's there to smile about anyway?
Okay, would you like me to just count backwards from 3?
Oh, would you like dyslexic people to just not exist?
My cousin has dyslexia, so offended.
Adopted. Don't even know who my cousins are, so more offended.
How about this? We all put a word we're comfortable with in our heads and I'll get the shot.
No, it doesn't sound very inclusive, though, does it? I suppose you'd like us all to stand a few metres apart, would you, Stalin?
Jesus Christ.
Oh, I don't see what religion has to do with this.
Well, I'm an atheist, so majorly triggered.
Is that a comment on the gun debate? Still trying to control people.
But it's not just the people. Has anyone thought about the animals?
Look, this is what we're going to do. Everybody throw up a peace sign and I'll take a photo.
Wow. Cultural appropriation is alive and well. Why don't you just ask us to say kung fu?
Guess what? New plan, group selfie, ready, set, go, boom. And looks awesome. You're going to love it.
Wait.
Nice to meet you.
Oh. You took it with the front camera, you stupid cyclist.
That's the world we are ultimately going to live in. You're not going to be able to speak your mind on anything.
That is pretty funny because, of course, it's impossible. I mean, those people, first of all, wouldn't all be friends with each other. So it's so. Someone said to me, "Oh my God, this is so clever." Martin Amis, who's a brilliant English author, he died just a few years ago. Martin Amis always said the problem with people who don't have a sense of humor, and most of these people don't. I mean, we know that's a like it's a made up thing, but most of the people who patrol our language, which is your whole subject here, those people don't have a sense of humor, right?
Not at all.
Martin Amis said, problem with people who don't have a sense of humor is that they also don't know when they're being serious, which is really scary because they'll tell you they're deadly serious about something, and you'll be like, "That's not serious. That's ridiculous."
You can't be serious about that.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. Well, but the PC police, I just hope that you realize there's one more warrior against you guys. Because listen, I'm not going to stand for this shit personally. At no point am I going to be policed as far as what I am going to say or what I'm not allowed to say and all of that stuff. As long as what I'm saying is not hate speech, which I never engage in, so I'll be fine. In fact, the reason I started following the works of Dr. Jordan Peterson was how he stood up against the Canadian government and all of the nonsense that they were trying to impose on him. So as a result, I am now, I'm completely compassionless. That's why I don't like feelings, Gareth, because most people, most rational people realize that feelings are fleeting, right? You're going to feel whatever it is you feel right now. And then in a couple of minutes, something else will happen or you'll come across a different stimuli that will make you feel something else. You can't live your life based on some feeling. And if the pursuit of your life is some feeling, good luck to you, because it's such a shallow pursuit. You're not going to be happy. I can guarantee that much.
Louis says in the comments, the whole movement will create more introverts. People will avoid interacting with each other out of fear of what might happen if they attempt to have a simple conversation, which is crazy. Well, yeah, but I don't think all of us will fall for this crap, because I mean, you've just said you're one more warrior against them, and I think every day there are, especially you see Gen Z, a lot of these people are just coming out of the womb anti this stuff, right? Because they're so saturated in it when they're young that they just want to break free. So there's this rebellious streak that you trigger in some people, and I'm afraid for the language police, you guys are in big trouble. It's not going to work in the long run. People will always find a way to. The whole point of communication, the whole point of language, is so we can understand each other. And when you make bizarre rules that don't make sense, that are laborious and stupid, people just ignore them, and they go back to using language for the purpose for which it was invented. A word has to mean what a word means. You can't change the meaning. Criminal and felon and man and woman and all these kinds of things, they have a meaning. And if you think that you can get the whole of humanity to come along with you on some bullshit journey to redefining stuff, it's not going to work.
It's not going to happen.
So
it's not going to happen.
Anyway, I do love that video. It's hilarious.
It is.
It's also, it's funny to me how, for example, there's so many people online now, and I see these arguments that come up, and you see people arguing now, especially around politics with the election on the way, getting into like heated arguments. Hey, I used to do that. I used to partake and get into the comments section, and especially in Twitter, X, someone will say something and then you feel like you have to have your say. And I don't know how many people read those comment sections. We do on this show, because I think a lot of the comments on our show are funny. The people who are commenting are making very funny remarks and interesting observations. But on X and certainly, I would say on YouTube, where there's hugely political content, there's a lot of people who are just like desperate to be heard. They just don't leave me out. That's all. So I think that's funny.
It reminds me of something Simpio said to me. She said, all of us are unique. Only a few of us are special. And you have to work to be special. And for whatever reason, people don't think that you need to work to be special. Like,
right.
You have to. And we got the false impression because of social media that you could post something now and, for whatever reason, it would trend and everyone finally hears what you have to say. But it's just as unlikely as you hitting the lotto. It really is. Like,
and even if it does, and let's say you become the talk of the town for a day, and for most companies, they will pay to be a trending topic as long as it's a good one. If it's a bad trending topic, they'll do anything to get out of there. It'll happen eventually, but it's not going to do anything long term. Long term, it's not going to matter. I mean, who's stopped shopping at Clicks because Julius and the EFF were upset about that label on a bottle of shampoo 2 years ago? No one. No one. Nobody's like,
remember,
wow, we're boycotting. No, didn't make a difference.
Do you remember that that ad campaign H&M had? They put a black kid in a T-shirt that said the coolest monkey in the jungle, and everyone got into a tizzy and got mad. Right. But H&M is still standing. So it's like, guys, get over it. Get over it. In fact, get over yourself. Let's start there. Get over yourself and grow up.
So Mapello in the comments says, I shared a joke with someone I know the other day. Someone you know, okay? Listen to this. They said I'm rude and uneducated. I asked her why she feels like that. She said, "My joke is about what she is going through, as if I was supposed to know."
I mean, okay, wow. Like,
Again, uh,
what must happen there? What must
you
happen
know,
there?
like you have to be such a self-centered person to
Mm,
think that everybody around you is prioritizing and knows the detail of what your life is all about right now. And first of all, you don't even know what your life's about right now. If I had to explain what is happening in my life right now to anybody, I would have to sit down and write some things down. I would need to consider it very carefully about like all the stuff that is happening, all the changes that are going on, all the different balls that are in the air that I'm trying to juggle. And frankly, a lot of it would be boring to most people. So
mm.
I don't assume that at any stage anyone would be that interested in what I had to say. But poor Mapello is like making a joke, probably to just make things a little bit
Lighten the
more fun.
mood.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
don't be so serious, guys. And then, like, this woman decides, well, now he's rude, and she used the word rude and uneducated.
Mm,
No, really, no. It's just you are self-absorbed.
yep. And
That's
typically when you hit these people with those kind of things, like when you just randomly make a joke, the first thing they'll do is try come after your character somehow. They'll try throw some dirt on your name somehow. Like
mhm.
now it has to turn into this emotional boxing match. Like that, you know what? I'm not going to indulge you. Like just get over yourself. Honestly, when I think about it, when I consider how many people I come across on a daily basis, like people I'll never ever see again. I
Right.
have I have concern for them as far as the altruistic ideas that I have for the world. Like I want
You
people to be happy. I genuinely want people to live
you
their
don't want,
lives
you
and
want
have their
bad
little.
things. You don't
I
want
don't
bad
want
things
bad
to
things to
happen.
happen to people. Not at all. No, of course not. I would love for people to live the lives that they want to live, genuinely so. But
Sure.
I'm also not going to spend too much time worried about how they think or feel about me because I have thoughts about
Right.
how I think and feel about them. And, I feel like it balances
Also,
itself out. Like, honestly,
but you know
don't
what? It's
mess with
also
me and I will mess with you. It really is that simple.
truth is they're probably not thinking about you and won't ever again. So
Yeah, they won't.
don't worry about it. Like
See,
really. So here's
right
some
now,
interesting things. Patrick says, "What a joke! 5 years ago, I was held up with guns. Traumatic. The day after, I told a friend about it. He made a joke, so I laughed with him. Well,
that's what
that's healing.
that's what it is, Patrick.
No, it's healing. That's good.
You're a
So,
gent. That's proper.
Jack, you started off this morning before we even went on air, and you told me something very depressing. You said that petrol prices are going up again.
Yeah, on Wednesday, apparently. Yeah. I heard it on the
Oh,
news driving back home yesterday. I was so annoyed. I was so annoyed. It's like,
because I mean, I fill up this car every week, sometimes even more than once a week.
mm,
And honestly, I don't know. I don't know if most of us can carry on having to churn out so much money just to get to where we're going. And we know in South Africa, transport is a massive part of the costs that very very poor people have to shell out in order just to get to work.
yeah.
I mean, there's this, the taxis that, for example, take so many domestic workers to work. They're not earning enough to pay for their transport and some. So,
Mm.
like, it can be up to 60% of their take home pay that they're spending just to get to and from work. 60%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's crazy. And now that the petrol price goes up, we all know what happens then, right? Um, Everything goes up. But when the petrol price does occasionally come down, like it has once or twice, they never bring those prices down.
It is so weird.
You noticed that?
It is so weird. Like, so ever since I was a kid, um, every now and again we'll have to use public transport. And you'd catch a taxi, and this week it's like 10 Rand. But this is like way
Mhm,
back, way back. You know what I mean?
mhm,
10 Rand.
mhm,
Then on the news, you hear that the petrol price is going up by like 75 cents or something like that.
mhm.
And A week later, there's a piece of paper on the side of the window of the taxi, and they let you know that the price is going up to 11 Rand. Fast forward 2 months, and the petrol price goes down 150.
Yeah.
That price is not going down. It's still 11 Rand. Like, for whatever reason, it never happens when the petrol price goes down. I've never seen in the 35 odd years that I've been alive, I've never seen taxi prices go down. Not once. Like, not even, like, not once.
Or anything. I mean, like the food prices will go up when the petrol price goes up, but those won't come down. You never see like, oh well, we've decided because it's cheaper to get sunflower oil from here to there. Now we're going to charge you less at the shop. It never happens. I saw this. I wanted your comment on this, by the way. 3 million South Africans pay 90% of the income tax. This is from a story in the Daily Investor. A tiny fraction of South Africans pay over 90% of all personal income tax. It shows that the precarious position of the country's tax base, with more and more revenue being squeezed from fewer people, was released and revealed by PwC tax partner Professor Osman Molaji. Now, what's interesting about this is, obviously, we're just looking at income tax, right? And there are other tax revenue sources as well. There's customs and duties, there's corporate tax, there's death duties, capital gains tax, all of that stuff. But in terms of personal income tax, which is the largest piece of the pie when SARS takes money in, this is a scary number. 90% of the tax is paid for by 3 million South Africans. Now, let's say our population is 60 million because we have illegal immigrants and all the rest too. And those people are obviously participating in the economy, but they're also like they're not necessarily adding to the formal economy, right? So they aren't being taxed like a South African is taxed. Certainly not in personal income tax. 3 million people out of 60 million is 5%. So 5% of the people in South Africa are paying for everything. I mean, that's that. I know that I'm simplifying it, and that's not entirely true. But even if it was 8%, because if you take all the other taxes and put them together, I mean, most of the corporate tax will be paid by the same people who are paying personal income tax, if you know what I mean, because they're employed in the corporate sector. Those are also the people who are buying a lot of goods because they'll be buying and selling. So they'll obviously they'll be responsible for most of the VAT as well. Even if we just look at personal income tax, this is completely unsustainable. There's no way you can run a country where 5% of the people are paying everything almost. It's crazy.
It actually kind of pisses me off, like, because in my mind it makes me feel like, as a taxpayer, I'm carrying the country on my back for whatever reason. Like, meanwhile, we were all given the opportunity for the pursuit of a meaningful goal, but now all of a sudden it seems like you're paying for other people to live their lives, essentially. And given the government that we have and the high levels of maladministration when it comes to the fiscus and how just wasteful they are with our money, this just rubs me the wrong way. It actually pisses me off.
Well, I
cannot believe that this is our reality.
Not to mention the fact that if you are in that 5% of people who's paying 90% of the personal income tax, you're getting nothing personally in return. Nothing. So if you're the guy who is handing over 40% of your income every month, that's what it is, 40, maybe even more. It could even be, if you add all the other stuff in, petrol fuel levies, you add TV licenses, you add all that other crap that's basically a stealth tax. But you're probably getting up to, and I'm being conservative here, let's say you're getting up to 50 or 60%. That technically means you're working for the government half the year. The year. And you are getting zero, because you don't get you're not using government healthcare. You're not using government schools because chances are, if you're in that 5%, you're probably doing private education, private hospitals, private medical aid. You're paying for all of that stuff in addition. So now you're being taxed at 50, 60%, plus another 20% of your income, again, conservatively, is going to pay for all the services which the government should be giving you that you've refused to use from the government because it's so shit and you have options. So at the end, you're left with, you're probably working 2 months of the year for yourself. That's what you're doing. And I don't see why anyone would put up with that. I think if you're smart enough, you've already figured out how to get your money out of the country. If you're smart enough, you've already figured out how to pay the least amount of tax possible within the rules, because you'll employ lawyers and you'll employ accountants and tax specialists, and even so, you're still carrying this country on your back, as you put it.
Yeah, and who wants to live like that? That is not a reality I want to live in. Like, it's absolute nonsense. And the fact that you then periodically don't have electricity, traffic lights don't work, you've got potholes to deal with, it just piles on top of it. Like, everything just piles on top of everything. It's absolute nonsense, which is why I keep saying, like, this year's elections are of extreme importance. If we don't take this opportunity to actually show up and do something, I can't even imagine what this country will look like in 5 or 6 years. It's scary, Gareth. Like, genuinely, it scares the shit out of me. And what worries me is that, for whatever reason, the way the government has conducted itself, especially over the past 10 years, has kind of trickled down into everyday culture in this country, where people don't do things because they are worthwhile, but they do things because they're expedient. Like, okay, this will be a quick exchange. I'll get my money. You'll get this. You get what I mean? And it's so, I don't like how people do not see into the future, or at least plan for much longer than 2 weeks. Like, it's like we're all in a race just to get to the end of the month, just so we can get drunk and call it a night. It's like,
You know what I feel like? You know what I feel like on this subject? That's all I've got to say. All right. Something else. Apparently, Bladen Zimande has visited the families of slain students. Now, just off the bat, you can tell us the story in a minute. But I've said 100 times on this show, the very worst thing that could happen is if I go through a tragedy of some kind, say a family member of mine is killed or whatever, horrible, truly horrible thing. The last thing I would want is to see one of these sons of bitches, that they must think that they're doing me a favor by coming to visit me.
Yeah, I don't want to see that either.
Someone from the government pitches up to try and make me feel better after I've gone through a tragedy, that would be like to add insult to injury. I would not want, and especially in the case of, where the government does have a responsibility, that makes it even worse. So I've never understood this idea that these ministers, these government officials, think that somehow they're helping.
It's virtue, excuse me, it's virtue signaling, and it's just, and at this point, it's what makes it the most repulsive thing that they do, is because they all know in the back of their minds that they need to be out there to get people to vote for them. So there was this incident that happened in Braamfontein. I don't know if you heard about it. There was some sort of shooting. I'm not too clear about the details, but there was a student on a bus, just minding their own business, who got shot and killed. And now Mr. Nzimande went to the family to offer apparently condolences and to assist in the funeral arrangements. I found this despicable, because if they had actually done their job as the government and assisted in making sure that this country is safe for that child to live in, they wouldn't have to go to that family to tell them, oh, we'll pay for the funeral. It's disgusting, genuinely.
Also, the fact that so many people in South Africa are so desperate for money that they are forced to take a government handout because they've ruined the economy. The government has ruined the economy. So they can go to people and offer them like a pittance, and
Yeah.
they'll have to take it because they're so poor, because the economy's so bad they couldn't get a job.
Mm.
It's like they're smearing your face in it, basically. You know, like when a dog shits somewhere and you take the dog's nose and you rub the nose in it and you smack it so it doesn't do it again.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing to you. They're like,
It's
"Oh, we made you poor, and so when we come with like a few hundred rand, you should be grateful for us." What a cheek.
get over it. Yeah, get over yourself. Get over yourself.
Crazy.
If
It's
you had
crazy, right?
if you had solved the problem to begin with, you wouldn't be in my face trying to sell me on some idea. The last thing, Gareth, I was telling Debbie this yesterday. My grandmother's funeral was awful. And it was primarily because of how people who attended the funeral were so interested in rubbing shoulders with some of these political people. And
Oh,
it's I don't think they actually understand how they affect our day-to-day lives. Like their mere presence at the family of the unfortunate student who passed on. Their presence there brought cameras,
mm,
TV. Now all of a sudden this family has to at some point get in front of a microphone and
mm,
let the country know just how heartbroken they are. We don't have to hear that. We know that. We feel their pain. We get it. No parent wants to bury their child. That is an
horrible.
unbelievably awful thing to go through. Now, to have your pain publicized by these political people who are just trying to drum up votes instead of actually fixing the country, it's disgusting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. It's terrible. I think that there's some interesting comments here. Indy LWTH says the majority non-taxpayers have the power to keep voting for the ANC, so the taxpayers can keep on paying grants so that they can keep on doing nothing. Great position to be in. Well, yeah, it's a slightly oversimplified version of what's actually going on, but I do see your
Yeah.
point. You're not wrong. It's just not 100% right. So I'm not going to get into like a detailed argument with Indy. I think we both agree. Bronwyn says, I wish there was a reality where we could have a hard reset out with all the old, in with the new. But the new must be qualified and passionate. One wrong move and you're out.
Yep.
See, like I also, this is the big problem we've got. And I think you and I have discussed this before, Jack, because we've interviewed a lot of political people and people who want to stand for office. And Pumi and I certainly have spoken about it because Pumi believes better to make a difference and to get into politics so that you can make the change that you want.
Mhm.
But the kind of people who get into politics are exactly the people you don't want in politics. And the kind of people you would love to go into politics will never.
Yeah.
You know, the perfect person to be president is the person who doesn't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
But that person will never run. And they won't go around electioneering and handing out like funeral money and T-shirts and kissing babies and all that stuff. They're not going to do that because they don't want to be president. And
Yeah.
yet what we really need is someone completely capable who actually isn't interested in being popular, who will do the right thing regardless. But those people will never go into politics. So it's this really crazy conundrum.
Yeah, and in fact, I think they should, as a matter of law, drop the amounts that these politicians get paid. So if you're a member of parliament, let's drop that down to a third. Maybe let's make sure that politicians get paid the base amount it would take the everyday South African to have a decent life. You get what I mean? To my understanding, it's like you need to earn about 45,000 rand a month in SA to live a somewhat decent life. This is what I'm told. So let's set it up that way. Politicians, political parties, that is your cap. You can't get any more than
Can't get
that.
bigger
And
than
let's see who actually steps up to change the country, because it's pretty obvious that a lot of these guys are in it for the money. It's just a money grab for most of it, and they'll do whatever they have to do, say whatever they have to say, besmirch whoever they have to besmirch, and then go get the bag. So how about we drop how much these people earn, and then let's see who sticks around.
Yeah, and I don't know how I feel about this, but Carla van Westhuizen says in the comments, only 40 million people are 19 and over. So actually 7.5% of the people who can vote are paying for the government. So in theory, the funder does not have the ability to make the decisions. So there's a whole other argument. It's like, if you're paying for something, you should be the one who has more say.
Mm.
But if you do that, you do end up with, the possibility that someone with a lot of money is going to take control of everything. I mean, that is kind of what Cyril did in the ANC. He started throwing money around and he took charge, because you also got to remember, even in the ANC, there are lots of desperate people who will take whatever money they can, especially as you go down lower in the ranks. So
Yeah, it's just unfortunate he forgot the money that was on his couch.
yeah, but he did hand out quite a lot of it, and he promised a fortune to the people who would vote for him when he went up against Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Remember at Nasrec?
Yep.
Now, you can only do that if you have money. And the worry I have is that we've got to find some sort of compromise between people getting what they pay for. In other words, that people who are paying the taxes need to have a proportionately greater say. Let's not say all the say, but a proportionately greater say, because they are effectively like the breadwinner in the house. Like if
Mhm.
your dad is the breadwinner in the house, he gets to make the rules. That's how it works.
Yeah.
If your mom's the breadwinner in the house, she gets to make the rules. That's how it works.
I don't know how we would be able to get that one right, but I think I like the idea because it'll also incentivize people to actually go out and get a job so that they can affect things in the way that you're speaking of. So yeah, I think on paper I like the idea. I just don't know how we'd be able to implement it in such a way that it doesn't completely alienate everyone. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. Honestly, I think we still we still got to come up with, and this is what every new country in the world, every new dispensation, every new constitutional republic is faced with, is like, how do we make the rules that will put us in the best position? And you
Right.
remember when Dan Miliani was in here the other day,
Mm.
he said to us, he remembers Codesa and he remembers the run up to the elections and all of that stuff. And South Africa as a country, our leaders tried in the 90s to put together the best possible set of rules to not only protect us from government, but to make government accountable, to create organs of state that would check on each other, so that you'd have a balance of power, so that people would feel like they had a say in government, because that's really important. Uh, Even that, they tried to make it as good as possible in the
Mm.
90s. So now we're talking ancient history here. And even so, it's going to have massive problems. Mapelo says, by the way, 45,000 Rand is still a lot of money for the politicians, considering the fact that they pay for almost nothing. 10,000 would be enough, he reckons.
The lower the better. My pillow, you on my side. I love it.
Dr. Robin says, my old man was a mayor in the 80s. He was paid an honorarium, but continued to run his own business. I would help fix South Africa for nothing, says Robin. That is how much I love this damn place. That keeps breaking my heart. Yeah, I mean, there's an argument that if you want to go into politics, that's almost like you giving back. You shouldn't even get paid.
You are in a position of service. I think people
Yeah.
forget that. You are in a
Yes.
position of service. You're not someone's boss.
Yeah, I think that's been lost along the way, though. Don't know that people are.
Completely.
All right, let's end this hour with some good news, because South Africans looking to fire up the braai can expect some relief at the tills. The cost of braai meat has been rising slower than the general inflation rate for the first time since November 2022. According to the latest Shisanyama index, which tracks the cost of popular braai goods, prices have risen by 7.8% year on year, compared to the national inflation rate of 7.4%. This suggests that food prices may be starting to come down after months of sharp increases. One of the biggest factors driving the downtick in braai meat prices is the recent fall in the price of onions and cooking oil. The central bank, however, remains cautious about lowering interest rates. So essentially what they're telling you is it's gone up, but it hasn't gone up as much.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, good news is hard to come by. So we're trying to find what we
And the Shisanyama index is the most South African thing I've heard all morning.
So great.
Shisanyama index,
Isn't that great?
it's absolutely amazing. I wonder what goes into that. Like what? Okay, no,
love it.
that chakalaka is not the one. We are going to need to switch it up.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love it.
The Shisanyama index. So there you go. You've learned something new this morning.
Yeah, yeah. That's going to be top of mind. Like every time I go to a braai and someone puts some not so great meat in front of me, I'm like, yeah, you see, you did not you did not refer to the Shisanyama index, which is why you ended up with this rubbish meat.
By the way, there are some people who are doing more than their job. A pilot who's delivered a baby mid-flight after a passenger went into labor on a plane from Taipei to Bangkok. I mean, this is amazing. So first of all, he's flying the plane. And he takes time out of flying the plane. Maybe he's got a co-pilot. I'm sure he would have. And then he goes and helps the mother give birth to the baby.
Yep.
And then carries on flying the plane. So
as if nothing happened.
This guy's a real winner. His name is Jakarin Sarananrakskul. All right. He is a trained medical doctor as well as a pilot. Talk about an overachiever.
Yeah.
Helped deliver a baby safely in the airplane bathroom. Later shared a photo of himself holding the newborn on social media. I've been a pilot for 18 years. I just helped a newborn baby on the plane. He said in a post on Instagram, sharing a picture of himself holding the baby. I think that's pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, that is. Not all superheroes wear capes.
Right. But if you're feeling like you don't do enough in this world, well, maybe you don't compared to this guy. He's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, he is.
So I like giving credit where credit is due. While the rest of us are, complaining about all the stuff we've complained about this morning, and we're trying to make it all work. This guy's got a medical degree and he's a pilot. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yep. But you can tell that he's a grown-ass man, though. Like, he's been a pilot for 18 years, 7 years of medical school before that. So, yeah, that's a grown-ass man.
He's probably 85. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah. He's got a couple of kids himself, I'm sure of that.
Definitely.
But can you imagine the panic on that plane, though? Like, that must have been intense. It's crazy.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that. No, but I'm sure people were thrilled when the baby was born. There's a lot of clapping and enthusiasm and all that. Nothing like that is ever. Listen, I don't want it to. I would like my flights to be eventless.
Yep.
I want my flights to be so boring that I don't even remember I was on them. But it must be kind of an exciting thing when a baby's born on your plane. I'm sure that everybody this week has been talking about that. If they were on the plane, they're definitely telling all their friends, hey, you'll never believe what happened to me on a plane on the way from, where was this? Taiwan to Bangkok. Nice. So anyway, that's all we got time for in that hour. We're going to come back with Democracy 101. Stick around for that and a whole lot more. CliffCentral.com. It is Tuesday, the 5th of March.
This week on the Auto Trader Podcast.
All right, moving on. So we got heat seekers here today. Essentially, the cars that will be coming out in 2024. 3 cars that you think are going to be coming out this year. The first one you gave me was Franks. Why is Franks going to be kind of a hot car this year?
The thing is with the Franks, it surprised all of us when I was there at the launch, and then also I drove it briefly as well while I was in the office. And it's the thing of, how did Suzuki get an entry-level price like this? With the kind of feature set and the drivability and quality and everything in between at that price point of 280k starting.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Highs and lows, highs and lows. It's all the same. Highs and lows, highs and lows. Keep all your game. Highs and lows, highs and lows. It's all the same. Highs and lows, highs and lows.
That ended very suddenly. 7 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock, cliffcentral.com. It is time for a little Democracy 101, which is brought to
Yes,
you
sir.
by the Podcast Party. Jack Motlanthe is my co-host this morning, and we are joined by none other than Granville Abrahams, who is the General Manager for Electoral Operations at the IEC. We've got lots to talk to him about this morning, and we've got lots of questions from the audience. We'll take even more. If you want to drop yours into the comments section, we will make sure that Granville gets them, and he can probably answer all of them, although we're not going to put any pressure on you. I mean, you can't just pull statistics out of the sky. We're not going to expect you to know the answer to everything, Granville, you'll be pleased to know. But we have no doubt, considering the people we've already met who've been at the IEC and who have come to speak to us, I mean, it's a very well-run operation. And I got to tell you, no one's asked me to do this. No one's paid me to do this. But I'm feeling full of confidence after meeting the people that we have met on this show from the IEC that we're going to have not only free and fair elections, but that they're going to run nice and smoothly. So I'm excited about that. And welcome to the studio. It's your first time with us. How are you, Granville?
Excellent. Thanks a lot for the opportunity, Gareth. And yeah, as you've mentioned, my first time. And hopefully I can be of some assistance and share some knowledge with the listeners.
Absolutely. Well, we've got a couple of questions here, but I'll let Jack start off, because now that registrations are closed, we can start looking at what actually is going to happen on election day. So for you guys, there's a lot of logistical stuff. How many election ballot centers there are going to be, how many staff you guys have, what kinds of logistics can you bring to bear for the election. We've also got a date, which the last time we spoke to the IEC, we didn't have a date for the election. So we know it's the end of May, 29th of May. So does this help you guys? Because you were waiting for a couple of things to be announced, the date, the registrations to close. So you can now kick into high gear on all of that stuff, right?
That's absolutely correct. We obviously plan to be ready, but in order to finalize and fine-tune dates, it's important that we have a proclamation. And once we had this proclamation, in terms of the legislation, we were required to do an election timetable. Now, the important thing about the election timetable is that it sets timeframes for contestants, political parties, and independents for this election. And it also sets timeframes for voters, which are very important. So we're glad that has now happened and that there is surety. People know when the date is. We've also now published the timetable. So, whatever impacts political parties or alternatively voters, we are now able to share that information with them.
Jack, I know you got a couple of things you want to know.
Yeah. Granville, thank you so much for coming through. And I actually wanted to find out, like, once you have set out the timeline and the timetable, as you just mentioned, what would be some of the things that you need to get off your checklist between now and the actual day of elections?
Well, Jack, thanks for that question. Maybe just to move back a couple of steps. I think the important thing is that the IEC is charged with delivering free and fair elections. Now, I don't know if we've ever interrogated that to ask ourselves what is free and fair. I'm sure everyone has their own understanding of that. But in terms of generally accepted standards for free and fair elections, it's important that first and foremost that there is a legislative framework, and that being the Electoral Act, and the election timetable, in fact, also forms an integral part of that. The next thing you need to have is a credible voters roll, so that those who are eligible to vote, that their names appear, and those who are not, that their names are not on there. So that is where we find ourselves now. The first thing was when the election was proclaimed by the president, effectively, in terms of the legislation, we said that is the cutoff date for registration. What we then did is we closed off all of our platforms, and we are now in the phase where we are cleaning out, and we've also exposed the voters roll for comments. So if there's any objections, that closed yesterday.
Okay.
The commission is now seized with entertaining those objections. And by next Monday, we'll have a final voters roll, which will be certified. And that is the voters roll that we will then take into this election.
So, Granville, sorry, what kinds of objections will people raise against the voters' roll? That's an interesting subject all on its own. I mean, you must get some pretty bizarre requests, but what are the usual run-of-the-mill things that people object to?
Well, first of all, exclusion. If Gareth Cliff registered and he now goes and inspect the voters' roll and he sees his name is not there, and then obviously he would have to take issue with that. He'd raise that matter with the commission and say, I applied, here's all of my evidence and my proof, why is my name not on there? Secondly, inclusion. You may be aggrieved to say, but this person, that I see here on the voters' roll, I don't think that he should be here. Well, in this election, it doesn't really matter. But in local government elections, it's very, very applicable. For example, if you say this person, does not belong in this ward, or this address does not belong, that is not very relevant in this case. Then also maybe issue of citizenship. They may say, but I know this person. How did he obtain citizenship? As far as I know, he is not a South African, and why is he on the voters' roll? So basically, those type of issues, and maybe even also the details. You may be on the voters' roll, but your details may be incorrect.
Okay. When you say, I mean, I can imagine a lot of people who would say, I don't want this person to be on the voters' roll. But in a local election, that's more likely to happen, you say, because, for example, they might have been registered in the wrong area and they don't actually live there, or they've got it wrong and they'll end up at the polling station. They won't be able to vote. So that kind of thing. What about dead people? I mean, what if you discover someone like your grandmother? Because you guys can't know everything. You don't know everything, right? So you can't put in all the information and remove names of dead people. And sometimes there might be a couple of people who've been gone for like 5 years who are still on the list. So should people be reporting dead relatives?
Yes, no, absolutely. What we do, however, Gareth, is that we verify the voters' roll against the population register. And it may be, in the case as you've mentioned now, that administratively a death may not have been reported or recorded at Home Affairs, and it would still be, the person may still be listed as a valid citizen, alive and well. And because of that, when we run it against the population register, we will not pick that up. On the other hand, also, we could also find someone that is listed as deceased, but is alive and kicking. And we've had cases like this in the past. Somebody would come to vote, and we'd say, well, I see your name here, but on the voters' roll, you're at the segment of rejected voters, and it has you listed as deceased. Now, I think that in a case like that, we are only reporting what Home Affairs has verified for us. And I think that you have probably bigger problems than voting on the day, because if you're listed as deceased by on the population register, you basically don't exist as a citizen. I'm sure that you won't have a bank account, you won't be able to enroll at university, and a whole lot of other things. So it is a way also of alerting citizens. And what we then advise them is that you need to get hold of Home Affairs immediately so that you can resolve that with them. But unfortunately, that is what we have to verify against. And if the person is listed either as alive and deceased, or deceased and alive, that is what we would record on the voters' roll.
As the general manager for Electoral Operations, I imagine that you are in charge of a lot of many moving parts to make this free and fair election happen. Are there any kind of safeguards that you have? Because I mean, when I think about the election that took place in 2016 and 2020 in the US, where it was said that the election was stolen and all of this stuff, what kind of safeguards do you have to kind of get rid of those kind of narratives ever popping up?
That's a very important question, and I think it needs to form an integral part of our voter education, because everybody has their own perceptions.
Yeah.
But here are the facts. And I'm not only saying this because I am the general manager for electoral matters at the IEC. But consider the following. South Africa, first and foremost, I think has the most transparent electoral system. And in doing that, consider the following. First and foremost, the entire legislative framework, the legal process, it is transparent. Even citizens have an opportunity, as we've seen now with the Electoral Amendment Act, to participate in the legal process, making laws. Political parties, definitely. And then when we plan elections, as you've seen now, first of all, with the election timetable, we didn't just publish. We are required by law to consult with the political parties, which we did. When we do our voting stations and our voting districts, we are also required to consult, and political parties actually physically have to sign off on all of these things. When we recruit staff, and I know staffing is a very contentious issue, we actually give the names to political parties at a local level, and we ask them to provide reasons why people should not be appointed. Come to voting day, we allow political parties, party agents, we allow observers to be a part of the process. If they are not happy, they may object. If they are not happy with the objection not being entertained, they may object to the, if the results are, the objection is material to the outcome, they may submit that to the commission. If they're not happy with the commission, they may go to the electoral court, which is a focus court. When it comes to counting, we count immediately afterwards, and we have a paper system so everybody can see what's happened. It's not electronic so that you can't see what's been happening there. Parties are part of that. They are, once the result, everything is counted, after they've been there for the whole day, they can take a photographic image of the result slip. The results are audited by external auditors, independent auditors. Once that is done, we provide them a platform where they can access our results system and see the actual captured form. They can capture that with their photographic image. And we even give them access, API access to the results, so they can do their own analysis and run their own back-end processes. And as I said, at the end of the day, if anybody is still not happy, there are there's either appeal to the commission, or alternatively there's the electoral court. So that for me is the most transparent. Now, when we have some observers that come here and they observe our elections, and then they say, your process is not transparent. I'm specifically talking about our observer brothers and sisters from the continent. They say, but your process is not transparent. And then we ask them, what do you mean? They say, no, your ballot box is not translucent. I can't see through it. So transparency has different meanings, you know?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, that was a bit lengthy, but
I actually love the fact that you went into detail, because what it does is it dispels the notion that our election is somewhat like the state at some point that it's captured. It's not. And it also helps with letting some of us know exactly where to go to find the answers that we might be looking for. You know, a friend of mine continuously points out the fact, to me at least in some of our conversations, that companies like SAB can get to places where ballot boxes cannot. In as far as voting stations are concerned, are we going to see more of them? Is the IEC doing anything to make them more accessible to perhaps people in rural areas and that kind of thing?
Yes. And specifically when we get to local government elections, we will have to do a review. Ahead of every election, we do a review. We call it a redelimitation exercise. And the keyword is limiting. We want to contain and keep the number of voters per voting district or voting station manageable. So we do this redelimitation exercise ahead of each and every election. Obviously, for this election, we have to contain ourselves within a ward because we can't go across wards. When local government election comes on board, where wards are redemarcated, then we'll have an opportunity to play around with that as well. In terms of international standards, last time I looked, I think that we are hovering just around 1,000 voters per stream. We currently have about 23,000 odd voting stations. But some of those voting stations have additional streams, so there's about 30,000 streams. Now, if we compare to 1994, when we had these long snaking queues,
yes,
we had 13,000 voting stations. Now, this redelimitation process is done in consultation with political parties. And specifically, you mentioned now rural areas. I think our colleagues in the, if I want to call it, rural provinces, they have done significant work. I know in Limpopo and in Eastern Cape, either two or three elections ago, they went through a massive exercise, in terms of being able to reach out and make voting more accessible. But you'll find that the bigger challenges are more in your urban areas where you have growth is quite fast. And even though it may be voting stations, may be in close proximity, there's also the issue about manageability. You don't want to have 20,000 people that's coming to vote at the school.
Yeah, so can I just ask quickly, Granville, for many of us, you will wait a little while, but it's not, I certainly, the longest I waited was, I think, 2 hours at mine. But what is your smallest and what is your biggest voting station?
Yeah. Smallest, we could have less than 100, about 50 people. But that would be in very, very remote areas that you have. And then our biggest station, I think, is somewhere here in Johannesburg, where we have close to 20,000 people. But now that station is a bit of a conundrum. Yes, we have a lot of people, but the number may not be, in terms of voters that will actually pitch up. Because from what I understand, I think it's Joburg Park, where you have a lot of transit, if you want to call it transit voters, coming through there. So you'll find probably that voters don't go and re-register once they have sort of settled. For this election, however, our biggest voting station is not going to be in South Africa, Gareth. It's going to be in London, by all accounts. Currently, we have just under 20,000 citizens on the voters roll. And then we still have the process where South Africans inside the borders and maybe even anywhere else in the world will have the opportunity, should they be in London, to say, I want to cast my vote in London. We call that the VEC 10 process. So that number could even increase and can get much bigger.
All right, well, that's I didn't know that London would be our biggest. And, there are often questions from people about which polling stations, they can use overseas. We actually covered that, I think, quite well the last time we had the IEC on. But just to be clear, all the votes, all the international votes put together is not enough to get even one seat in Parliament, as I understood from the guys who were in last time. Is that still the case? Oh, by the way, how many I'm asking you two questions at once here. Sorry. How many registrations did we have at the end? What was the final tally of total registered people?
Is this now for international or on the entire voters roll?
Total, yeah.
Yes. We are still obviously, Gareth, as it after when the voters roll closed.
Yes.
We had 27, close to 27.8, just under 27.8. Now, the reason why I say it's not final as yet, because remember, we now gone through the maintenance and objection process, and we need to certify on Monday. We'll have the final number on Monday, but it's around 27.7 million, which, if I may add, is the highest that the voters roll has been since we have started. We still have a gap, but this is the highest figure ever. And so much so for the prophets of doom that talk about a democratic recession. This is the first indication, that democracy is alive and well. And we also expect that for this election that we will have a very good turnout.
Excellent. Well, that's good news, and that's worthy of celebration. I think people should be very proud of the fact that so many more people have registered, and that they will go and hopefully vote. No good to just register if you're not going to vote. So what do we do with special voting? Because there may be people who are out of the country that day. There may be people who are not in their neighborhood. There are people who have got to work that day, if you're in emergency services or whatever. What do those people do? And also old people who maybe can't make it to the poll, don't want to stand in the queue. What are the different exceptions that you guys will allow for early or special voting?
Thanks. I think that's very important for voters. This is key information. The first category, Gareth, is you now know what the election date is.
Yes.
It is the 29th of May.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know for a fact that on the 29th of May, you are not going to be at home, and home being the place where you registered. Let's say, for example, Gareth is registered in Sandton.
Mm-hmm.
But on the 29th of May, he knows that he has a meeting in Cape Town.
Right.
And he's going to start traveling maybe the Friday already because he wants to make a weekend of it. So he's not going to be around here. So he's going to be outside of his voting district. For this election, same as in local government election, you can only vote where you are registered. The exception is, however, is that you may notify the chief electoral officer, and this will be as from Tuesday onwards. You will be able to notify the chief electoral officer and tell him, I want to go and vote in Cape Town because I'm not going to be here. But by saying that you want to go to Cape Town, you actually also need to nominate the station where you're going to be. So now Gareth knows that he's going to be in Sea Point, and he says, well, the voting station there that I identify with is Sea Point Town Hall. We will have on our website a facility whereby you are able to then do that notification. So what this will allow the IEC is to notify that station to say, expect Gareth to come to Sea Point Town Hall, and you will be on a list there. You will then be able to cast your vote there.
Okay.
The maybe at this stage, if I may also mention, the fact that you're going to be outside of your province will mean that you will only be receiving one ballot. That is the national compensatory list ballot. You will not receive a provincial ballot for Gauteng, since you registered in Gauteng, nor will you receive a provincial ballot for Western Cape because you're not registered there. And at the same time, also the regional list ballot. So you only get the one ballot.
Okay.
If however you remained in Gauteng, somewhere in Gauteng, you would then still get all three ballots if it was a station here. So that is for people that's going to be away from their voting station. Now, the second category is people who say, oh, on the 29th, I am not going to be here, or I'm going to be working whole day, but I'll be available on the 27th and 28th. Those people may apply for a special vote, once again through our website, special vote, and they will say, I'm coming to vote at the voting station where I'm registered, not on the 29th, but on a special voting day. And you will then be expected, and you'll be on the list, and you can cast your vote there at the voting station where you are registered, but a day or two before.
Okay.
The third category is for the gogo who is at home in a wheelchair. She's bedridden, or for some other reason, as a result of her condition, is unable to go to the voting station. That person may apply for a home visit. Now, it's very important to note that in the case of a home visit, we can visit you anywhere. It does not have to be in the voting district where you are registered. So if Gogo is visiting Jack, and Gogo is maybe from the village, but now she's visiting Jack, she can then apply for a home visit at Jack's residence.
Right.
Once again, if that address is outside of a province, she'll only get a single ballot, but if that address is inside, she'll get all ballots. So that's basically the three categories.
So I'm a bit of a skeptic, and I enjoy questioning everything. When it comes to the counting of the ballots, I mean, we are not using the electoral process. So do those boxes get immediately opened at the voting station and counted there, or are they transported to a different venue where the counting will begin?
Okay. First and foremost to note is that special votes are a day or two prior to the big voting day.
Okay.
So what happens is that we allow party agents to witness the entire process, to follow our teams. So we will notify party agents, the teams that will be going out, and they can then accompany. The ballots are follow what we call the double envelope system. So the voter will be provided with ballots, be given two envelopes. The smaller, what we call the smaller envelope, is unmarked, and voter will place the ballots in that. Then that envelope will be placed in a bigger envelope, which is the marked envelope. The person's ID number is then written on there, and name, etc. details, so that when we get back to the voting station, first of all, there's a pre-approved list of home visits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you must be on the list in order to receive a home visit. Anyway, once the task is completed, they will go back to the voting station. We call that the office of the presiding officer.
Mm-hmm.
There, a reconciliation will take place to mark off those ID numbers that can be evidenced from the outer envelope off the list, to say, yeah, these people, they're valid people, and etc. And then on voting day, you'll find that we'll open up the outer envelope, and we'll then place it with the rest of the ballots.
Mm.
So that when it comes to counting, we open up the unmarked envelope and then count the ballots together.
I was just going to ask, so that you're not revealing who the person who you did the home voting is voting for, because they would be worried about not being identified with their name on the outer envelope and their vote on the inside. What if they don't want anyone to know who they voted for? The secrecy is maintained by the double envelope system, because remember, the outer envelope is disposed of during voting day, and the envelopes are then mixed with all of the other ballots. So when it comes to counting, you have blank envelopes. There's no names on there. The identity has been discarded, and that has now been thrown away after we've reconciled the entire process. So when you open up these envelopes, you get ballots there. Those ballots are not linked to any specific person. Okay, perfect. What about special votes in terms of people who, I don't know, maybe they just they can't wait in the queue. They've got an emergency that they have to deal with. Do they just have to forfeit their vote on that day? Let's say someone, the kid at home trips and falls, and you have to rush him to hospital. Now you don't get a chance to vote. Too bad, right? IEC can't be responsible for everything.
I think that, Gareth, this is why, when we recruit presiding officers, we're asking for people that are able to manage and mediate and to be able to respond to unique circumstances. So, for example, what we do train our people is to say that, you need to identify people in need. So if you, for example, see that there is an elderly person standing in the queue and it's a long queue, then they are trained to go to that person and say, ma'am, can you please move this way? I want to attend to you first. And they'll explain to the other people in the queue. I'm sure that everybody will want to, get out of the queue as fast as possible. And would probably say, I need to be attended to first. But our presiding officers are not unreasonable. And if they are approached, they will deal with the situations as they come across them.
Now, this year, I don't know if it's the first time ever, but a lot of voter registration was done online. A lot of people use their phones for a multitude of things. How close or far are we from having remote voting, where I can verify my identification on the phone or on the tablet or on my laptop or whatever the case may be, and I don't have to necessarily stand in line to cast my ballot? How far into the future is that from becoming a reality?
Yeah, no, thanks. The whole e-voting thing is not something that the IEC is running away from. In fact, we actually started the whole debate, I think probably about 11 years ago in this country. We have also done some research. We actually went so far as in, I think it was now with I think 2021, it was now with the amendments that we had proposed for this election, but I think it was 2021. We introduced a clause with the intent of trialing, going on trial with electronic voting in whatever form, and we put in a clause in a proposal which we invited comment in, and we said we would like to experiment with other forms of voting, and it was misinterpreted, and there was lots of negative comment about that from certain NGOs, so much so that we abandoned that thought. But suffice to say, it is not a unilateral decision that the IEC can make. First of all, it would require legislation. So as far as that is concerned, we would need to obviously get political parties, parliament, etc., on our side. It would probably, depending on how you want to go, if you're going to go electronic machines or counting machines, it will require an investment. So Treasury would probably also have to be on board. But at the end of the day, it's not a unilateral decision. But I think what you can be rest assured as a South African is that you have a world-class election management body. We have embraced digital transformation. The only thing that is still paper-based is just the ballot and the counting process. But in every other aspect, we have gone digital. If I look, for example, at candidate nomination system that we have is the only system in the entire world where we tell a political party, there's a platform, go and nominate your candidates, you can pay on there and everything, and verify your candidates and complete the entire job without sending in any paper to the IEC. Nowhere else in the world do you have that. So we've really embraced that. But when it comes to remote voting or even electronic voting, we have machines. That is a conversation that we obviously want to be a part of, but it's not a unilateral decision.
Sure.
Granville, can I ask about the ballot papers that are not used? So you'll obviously have a bunch of ballot papers afterwards, and people worry from a security point of view. What happens to those ballot papers that aren't used at the ballot stations? Are they put in a box and sealed and destroyed, or what happens to them?
Yes, I think that's very important, Gareth. First of all, we plan for 100% turnout. I think it's suicidal to plan for anything less. I think there was 1 year I can remember in Italy a few years ago. The election management body there or the authorities decided that they're going to plan for less than 100%. I don't know, because of the fact that participation was not as high. I think they planned for 50 or 60%. And then they ran out of ballot papers and they had to extend voting so that they could print some more ballot papers. Now, we plan for 100%. For this election, for example, we're probably going to be printing, I think the figure I heard from the other day was about 90 million ballot papers.
Wow.
Now, you may ask, why are you printing 90 million ballot papers? Well, first of all, there's 3 ballot papers per voting station. Each voting station will have 3. It will be the national, it will be the regional, and then also provincial. So if you divide that by 3, you get to about 30. And now you want to ask, why 30? Because I just told you I've got just under 28 million.
Right.
The 30 million comes into the fact that I print these things in books of 100. And that is how it gets rounded off. And with all of those rounding, you find that at the end of the day, those numbers actually go into that. So that's a sort of a thumb suck, but about 90 million. Now, what happens to the unused ballot papers? First of all of the ballots are at the voting station so that we don't run out of ballots. A ballot paper reconciliation is done at the end of the day before counting. Well, even at the beginning of the day, in the presence of party agents, they will say, yes, all the ballots that we receive, so many books equates to so many ballots. At the end of the day, we do a reconciliation. We say we've issued so many, or at least we have so many left. We receive so many, so the difference must be issued, less cancelled, etc. So that when we count, we get to that amount. All of the ballots go back in the ballot box, whether it is now used or unused. 6 months after the elections, that's the earliest. The commission may then, at that point, they may then issue instruction that it may now be disposed of. We send a lot of this, all of our paper, but specifically this ballot goes back for pulping, so that it goes back into the cycle for recycling. And in that way, we also make our contribution towards recycling and those things.
A lot of paper.
It's a lot of paper. It's a lot of paper. Have I ever seen bigger paper exercises than this? We assisted 1 year with the DRC printing of their ballot papers. The printing companies, presses, didn't have enough spaces for the reams, the rolls. So we had to have warehouses just to store the rolls. We had to then transport them, get them back to the warehouse in the form of a ballot paper. And after we printed all of the ballot papers, then there's some people that were in the bush in the DRC that decided they now want to also come to the table. And all of those ballot papers had to be pulped again and started new. So it's a lot of paper.
Yeah.
In fact, the exercise is so much so that ahead of an election, it is not unusual for us to have discussions with the printing industry just to establish if there will be enough paper in the country. So it's not just you wake up one day and say, I want ballot papers. Yeah.
So, I'd like to go back to the online conversation. Social media plays a very large part in our daily lives. And, sometimes to the good, sometimes to the bad. So there's going to be, I imagine, a lot of misinformation and disinformation on the day of the elections. I remember a couple of years, there were pictures circulating around of ballot boxes that were thrown on the side of the road, and it turned out not to be the truth. Are you guys prepared in as far as the influence of social media might have on the day of elections in terms of misinformation and disinformation?
I think the challenge there, Jack, is that it doesn't matter how prepared we are. With social media, you can post something now, you can have it reported or monitored and taken off. But once it has been flighted, the damage has already been done. I think what we require and investing is in terms of educating voters and citizens out there that it's election season now, and these things are going to happen. And whatever you see happening, you need to question. So, for example, we're going to see some of the pictures that we've seen for the last 2-3 elections, and it's going to appear as if it's now current things. Secondly, what you see is not really what it projects to be. Just to give you an example, typical example, let's say ballot boxes that ended up on the field. Now, what is a ballot box? Was it a ballot box with ballot papers in, or is it just a box? So the one example that I'm referring to is we employ people on the day, ward managers, they have their bakkie or whatever, put stuff at the back, and it's flat pack cardboard furniture, whether the ballot box, a chair or table, you've seen these things. So they're all flat pack. So you put it on the bakkie, you drive down the Ben Skuman or whatever, and it flies off because you didn't secure it. Now somebody comes there, he sees this flat pack, and he takes photos of it and says, ballot boxes are laying in the field. The election hasn't started. It is something that well, it's something that obviously that we don't want to see happening.
Of course.
But now there's a story behind this. Let me give you another one, for example. As I've mentioned to you, the process. After the votes have been counted, they are then reduced to a result slip that parties have make an image of. Everything else is put in the ballot box that is sealed and has to go to a warehouse. Now, that ballot box filled with ballots, and they marked, and most importantly, they've been counted and they've been recorded. That ballot box is compromised after the results has already been recorded. The storyline will be, there's marked ballot box. The ballot box was found with marked ballots. And this is how the election has been compromised and all of that. Once again, it is not something that I want to find excuses for. We don't want those things, but you need to look at context. So it's going to be a tough ask at the end of the day, because case in point, I don't know if you're aware of this, 2 or 3 days ago on social media, somebody said, they've seen the ballot paper for this election.
Okay.
And a certain party has been included. The candidate nomination is only closing on Friday. So how can we have
it couldn't have been possible,
But because of the fact that, I think the only way to prohibit this or to counter this is through education. Because I don't think really that there's been a mechanism to stop it timeously.
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult waters to sail through. That is pretty straightforward. I think what I was trying to figure out was whether or not there would be someone from the IEC who'd kind of be overlooking to take note of any trends that might pop up during the day. As difficult as it might be to, offset anything that happens on social media. I think what you're pointing to is that by educating people, we'll be in a position to make much better decisions in as far as what's happening on social media. Yeah.
Yeah, we do have a partnership with Real 411 that monitors this. We've also had a workshop with political parties on with Real 411 as well as your social media giants, just to educate them on the rules and the protocols to follow if there's any complaints and etc. But at the end of the day, it's the rank and file out there is those who want to be mischievous. And at the end of the day, whether or not they're acting in the interest of anyone, whoever they purportedly acting on, those people will disown them. So at the end of the day, we're looking at individuals, and it's very difficult to track them on social media.
Definitely, yeah.
It's extremely difficult.
No, it is. And there's another question here from Slippery Pickle, which I think is quite interesting, because people are always concerned about foreign interference in our elections, right? And Slippery Pickle says here, when NGOs challenge the IEC, do they actually do an investigation of the NGO? Because the NGO could be foreign funded, which could in some way be tantamount to foreign interference. I mean, do we just take complaints from everyone, objections, when they challenge you on some specific thing? Do we just take everybody's complaints, or some people ignored because they're foreign funded and don't actually have any business being involved here?
Yeah, no. Well, we treat every objection or complaint in good faith. But I think the question that you're raising, Gareth, is that we've now got political parties to account, in terms of their funding. But NGOs, not that I want to be critical of them, but in terms of the issue that you're raising now, there is no requirement for NGOs to disclose their funding. So I don't know. There's probably a gray area.
All right. And then this is another good question. Is there a tender process for all this printing of these ballot papers? I mean, how does that all work?
Yes. We are a public funded institution. And as such, we are subject to the Public Finance and Management Act. And that means that we have to comply with all the procurement procedures. And it's a good question that is being asked now, because there's a lot of procurement that goes into electoral logistics. And one of the things that we have achieved this year that was a bit of a difficulty in the last election is that we were able to complete and advance on our procurement processes, with most of them having been achieved last year. Even the ballot papers, be assured we haven't printed them, but we do have the service providers, the panel of service providers. We have gone through those processes. We have them on board. Now, basically what this means is that I think everything over 500,000, that estimated over a value of 500,000, you need to go out in a public tender process. Anything below that, you can get 3 quotations, competitive bidding for that. The tender process must be public, must be advertised. We also have our website where we have what we call an e-procurement system, where all of our tenders, the specs, the award, and all of those things can be viewed. And as I said, also as a public institution, anybody that's interested in any of these processes or to see who bidders and stuff was, these are public documents.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Are there any unique challenges you're expecting from this year's election, apart from the number of people who's, it's more than they've ever been in terms of registered voters? Are there any other things that you guys have had to look out for? It's impossible to plot and plan everything, but you've got to have, a huge amount of foresight, and you've got to be able to look almost into the future and be able to tell what's going on before the rest of us do. Are there any things that you're particularly worried about that you guys are paying attention to that we don't even think of when we think of what the IEC has to do?
Yeah, I think, a lot has been said that in this election, we're going to have 3 ballots. But we normally have 3 ballots in local government election, with the exception of metros. So metros, where you have higher numbers, will, for this first time in an election, have 3 ballots. So we are obviously mindful of that. We hope for a high turnout, but a higher turnout, more traffic will also require that the process may also obviously be lengthened and extended. So that one we are monitoring closely. The other one is, but we'll have an indication by Friday in terms of the size or the length or the extent of the ballot paper. So what this could impact on, and we have made provision already in terms of certain of these aspects, is if your ballot is too big, will your ballot box not be too small? So obviously now you're going to have to get more ballots, those type of things. So it's basically just the entire process as it's impacted by a combination of turnout. We obviously always prepared for 100% turnout, but turnout with a bigger ballot, more choices, and that impacting and affecting the process. And the knock-on effect on that is, people start getting edgy, if it takes a bit longer, etc. Now, maybe I think what we've actually noticed in the past is that the tendency, South Africans are normally very late in responding, but on voting day, everybody is early. So by 11 o'clock, we would have probably have had 60-70% of people who would have been voted already, which means all of them come early because they with the intention that they want to get done with it as quick as possible. I don't suggest that that it's possible to say to people come at phased intervals, but then everybody comes late again, or everybody comes in the afternoon. But this is just something that we need to deal with. And the appeal to people would be is that please do not be intimidated by early morning queues. The queues normally start before we have started. So give us an opportunity to, to show you that we can process this. So we need people that can think on their feet, ensure that the queues move.
People are keen.
Yes, the introduction of our voter management device will, however, also assist in processing people quicker, because it will just require a scan of the ID number, and we'll have all of your details there, and you'll be able to move on with somebody else marking off your name. So we hope to see that also, aiding the process.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. In the unlikely event that the election has to be postponed or all out cancelled to another date, what kind of issues would have to prop up for that to happen? I imagine it's an unlikely scenario, but what would have to happen for the IEC to just say, you know what, we can't have these elections this year, or maybe on the 29th of May?
Well, I think first and foremost, to answer the first part of your question, that one is beyond doubt. It's not for the IEC to say. The Constitutional Court has already ruled on the matter of elections must take place every 5 years.
Okay.
So that can't be postponed, and it's not for the IEC to postpone.
Mm-hmm.
There is provision in the legislation that the Commission may postpone voting at a specific voting station if there's been maybe, let's say, give an example, flooding, people couldn't get across the river, and no voting took place. In a case like that, the Commission can postpone voting to another day, but it's got to be obviously within the time frame for us to still be able to announce the results. I think it's 2 or 3 days. I think that if anything should occur, that it's not possible to hold elections, I think that elections should probably be the least of our concerns, because it will impact on a whole lot of other things.
Right.
Let's say, for example, a natural disaster.
Mm.
I think we'll have bigger things to worry about than elections. For example, if we should have, what's the word they use? But if we should have a total power shutdown.
Yeah.
I've seen that these things can take up to 3-4 weeks to get the grid started again. We'll have bigger problems than just having to vote. So, yeah. So we'll have to deal with those issues when we arrive there.
So short of the grid collapsing, we're voting.
We are voting. We are voting.
Okay, cool.
There are one or two quick questions I just want to throw in here because Jittery Cursor wants to know, how's the Western Cape's quota for regional seats calculated and determined? Do you know that answer offhand?
Yes. I think that, when we look at this, the quotas, people may say, but KZN has more people or more populace than Western Cape, but Western Cape's quota is higher. I think what we need to bear in mind, what is the quota? The quota is the quantum of seats that was required. The quantum of votes that was required to get a seat in that legislature. Now, on that regional list. I think the question regarded regional. So,
yes,
first of all, how do you calculate that quota? It is a factor of, as a numerator, you say the number of people who voted. And as a denominator, it says how many seats are there in the legislature. It's just a simple proportional calculation. Now, the Western Cape has 42 seats. I think in their legislature, in the provincial legislature. I'm now toggling between legislatures and regions again, but it's the same principle involved. Now, because of the fact that you only have 42 seats in the legislature for the province, but 80 in KZN, so it's almost double. So you can see that having an impact. And then also the voter turnout will have an impact. So it's not based on population, it's based on voter turnout. And then also the quota is arrived at by dividing it by the amount of seats. And in so doing, you'll find that Western Cape, in the case of provincial legislature, I think is higher than KZN. So that's how it's achieved.
Okay, and then finally, someone wants to know here, the permanent marker they use on our nails. No whiteboard markers allowed. You guys obviously have to make sure you've got enough of those. How long does it last? What is the purpose of it? Just go through those marks. Are we going to get them this year on our thumbs?
Yes, you are most definitely going to get them. This is embodied in the legislation as part of the voting process. And it is one of the measures to ensure that we are able to identify whether you have voted or not. The other one, obviously, is marking your name off the voters roll. And then we also have a third measure whereby we're able to identify this now. This is through our voter management device machines that are connected through an APN and through our servers. So if you have cast a ballot at a voting station, we are able to pick it up should you present yourself at another voting station. We would be able to identify that. Now, the marking the marking ink is I don't know exactly how long, but it's probably as it will grow out and it will fade over time. But it is not something that is going to disappear immediately a day or two later. So bear with us if a lot of people have sacrificed a lot for our democracy. So the least we ask of you is just to have the little mark on your nail.
I mean, it's not even painful. I mean, all things considered, it's just a tab of ink. Okay, like
it is something that you should, Jack. It's something that you should wear with pride.
Yeah.
To say, look here, I've made my mark. It's my democracy. I owned it. Yeah.
And I participate. Yeah.
Yes,
definitely.
And I mean, unless you're a hand model who's got work that day, there's no reason for you to be particularly worried. All right, listen, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground here, Granville, and I know that there's probably a whole lot more that you could have still told us, but I really appreciate you answering all of these questions. Thank you to everybody who posed questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to every one of them, but I think we've tried our best to get as many of these things dealt with as possible. If people still aren't sure of something, if they want to get hold of the IEC, I know that you guys are open to anyone from the public who has any concerns or questions. What is the best way for them to get hold of you?
There's different platforms, Gareth. First of all, there's our toll-free line. It's 0800 11 8000. So we have operators that can answer a host of questions. We also have a WhatsApp line, and well, that number you could find on our website. I don't know it offhand. Then if you just want to find out what your registration status is, you can do a SMS with your ID number 32810. Our website also has relevant information, specifically those who are interested in the special vote, home visits, and the Section 24A. I think also most importantly is that look out for the dates. Very soon, we will also be publishing the list of candidates for political parties for inspection to invite comment, and then thereafter we'll do final lists. So I hope that voters, in considering their choices, will actually make use of this information to see who the candidates are before they just go in blindly. Right. But yeah, and if all else fails, we also on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and we're also responding to questions there as well.
All right, I love it. Thank you so much. Very good to have you on this morning. Granville Abrahams is the General Manager for Electoral Operations at the IEC, and we are gearing up. We're ready. It's only a couple of weeks away to the elections. Thank you so much, Granville.
86 days away, actually.
86 days until you can cast your vote. Maybe an important election. We don't need to under or overemphasize that. I think people know. All right, Jack, from us, it's enough for this morning. We will see you tomorrow for this live interview that I recorded the other day. It's Daniel Taub, the expert in international law. I think you'll find him very, very interesting. That's tomorrow. And then we'll be back live on Thursday at 6 a.m. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.